into the gym and watching practice, it's kind of a little discerning. We will be communicating with all registered participants and their families prior to your first practice via email to let them know what the requirements are. So that communication will be coming from the SODE office. It's also a communication that we have drafted for the sport directors to send out. So look for that information to be going out to families, and we just ask for you to support us with that. If you have, I'm almost afraid to say this, but you are going to get circumstances where there is a special circumstance or a certain incident where we might have to revisit this, or we might have to look at an individual case. Please bring that to Kylie's attention. We will make those decisions on an individual basis. We don't want to say, okay, well, you can come in and you can't come in. You can only imagine the issues that are going to arise. So we do want to know if there's an issue, and then we'll manage it as it comes up. Just to let you know, all of these COVID protocols are based on current SODE protocols and the guidelines of the CDC. If your practice location has more stringent guidelines, if you're in a school gym that has more stringent guidelines, if you are on a court in another facility that has more stringent guidelines, you must follow the protocols of the facility that you're in. Saying that, well, those aren't SODE protocols, so I don't have to do it, is not going to fly, because they will pull our ability to use that facility. So we will let you know if we hear of anything, but if you become aware that of more stringent guidelines, please make sure that you're following them. Just as a reminder, the events that we're going to offer, and we're going to get into this a little bit more as we move through the presentation: individual skills, team skills, 3v3, half court, and full court. We're going to have team makeups. We've had very, very low registrations for unified partners. So in all likelihood, we will not be offering unified team. And so we will be looking to be in these three categories, and that's going to be part of FIF's discussion. So I'm going to move along really quickly and not belabor this point. But again, we're going to talk a little bit more about assessments. And so right now I'm going to turn this over to Gary, who's going to share with you just some information about how to set the culture and the tone for your season. So Gary, all you.
All right, thanks. Good to see everybody, some familiar faces and some new faces, and I guess even Chris Pop, it's good to see you too. But it's great to be back and helping out with this part of it. So, I think many of you, some of you were part of when the organization did core values a few years ago, and I'm sure many of you have done it maybe in some of the organizations you do or you're a part of. And core values, if you don't know, are certainly just some statements of beliefs and attitudes that you have to kind of align your group, company, organization, whatever, in your thoughts, words, and actions, right? So so everyone's kind of moving in the same direction. Well, we met earlier this fall and kind of came up with something a little along those lines that was pretty appropriate to what we're doing here. We call them court values, right? So what we're trying to do is put together values that you as coaches can kind of live through that will provide your athletes the best possible experience, right? If we all look through these and kind of be mindful of them and everything in your preparations and being with your team, that'll create the most consistent, highest quality experience possible, right? But we've all got to kind of buy into them and move in that direction. The full definitions of these are in your handbook, Basketball Coach's Handbook. And I'm not going to read through them all, but I'm just going to kind of touch on them really quickly. So preparing thoughtfully, right? That means coming to practice with a plan written down, ready to go, so that you can be as efficient and organized as possible, which can maximize the most amount of time in skill development for your athletes. So put the time in ahead of practice. Just don't walk in and say, all right, what are we going to do tonight? You know, you're the one in charge. You want to make sure that you're providing direction, but you're prepared to put that direction in place. Include your coaches. You know, we look through the roster and there's lots of coaches, you know, for probably less teams than usual. So utilize them. Use your coach. If you're a head coach in your plan, make sure you're putting in there roles for each of your coaches during certain times of practice, whether it's everybody runs a drill, when we're doing offense, somebody's working with the defense, but that they're just contributing and not just standing around. Your coaches will benefit from it. You'll benefit from it. And ultimately the athletes will, because they're constantly learning from different sources on the floor. Teach positively, right? Instead of correcting the wrong thing that's done during practice, maybe keep emphasizing when someone does something right. You know, Johnny did a great job of executing that drill. Johnny, can you demonstrate that for everybody? You know, that positive reinforcement goes a long way. People want to emulate that, and it's not looked at as negative. And, you know, a lot of our athletes may look at, you know, you didn't do that right, and then close down. But if you accentuate the positive, it could really influence everybody. Improve performance. Every practice, every time you talk with your athletes, work with your athletes, the goal should be to improve on what you've done before. Right? Don't settle for where they are. Challenge them to be the best they can be. Raise the bar as high as you can be, and let them know every day we're going to get better. Your performance is going to improve, and we're going to make you work as hard as possible. And most importantly, enjoy the experience. Coaching, especially in this day and time with COVID and all these protocols you got to go through, and somebody gets a sniffle, and athletes with behaviors, you know, a lot of times it can be very stressful. Take the opportunity at some point during the practice, step back, look at your athlete's successes. When you get to competition, you know, take a step back, watch them play, watch them do what you've taught them throughout the season. It's really important for your mental health as a coach, but it'll make you a better coach as well, because you're able to look through it as from a fun experience as opposed to a rigid kind of, we got to get this done kind of experience. So take these core values, live through them as a coach, right? Put these in your pocket. And when you prepare for every practice and when you're at every practice, make sure your coaches understand this as well, that, you know, you should all be doing these to be the most successful you can with your athletes. And I think FIFA is going to take it from here. Well, I know FIFA is going to take it from here and kind of say how that applies into what we're going to do from here moving on forward.
Fantastic. All right. So Cheryl, I think we're going to the next slide. I will say, as everyone else before me has said, it is great to see everybody. Super excited that we are having a season this year. And thank you to the folks that are indulging my what I attempted to have as a humorous moment. Maybe I should take this off so people can take me a little bit more seriously as I'm going through this material. So we'll go to the next slide. And I don't know, did that move? Okay, here we go. All right, so we've talked before in the previous clinics, and one of the staples to our time with our athletes in the gym and improving their performance is obviously the time that we spend on the court and having a solid practice plan before you walk in. And in the past 2 years, we spent a lot of time going through what mattered, what is a good makeup, how can we put a tool together that would be usable through the different levels of the athletes and consistent. So as the athletes are coming through the various teams and the various programs, that they are working in a consistent fashion and learning in like fashion. So we want to make sure that we're always including a warm-up. The sport skill development obviously is very critical. There's team or group activities for skill development. We've got the cool down period. And throughout, we're talking about focusing on the health and the fitness, right? So making sure that, to Gary's point about preparation and coming in the gym and using your assistant coaches, that we are saying, hey, here's the practice plan. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but you know, greeting them and letting them get going, getting out on the court, but everybody's on the same page with, this is the format that we're going to work every practice we come in, and so that we don't have a lot of downtime. We have water breaks, we come back from the water break, we're resuming the next drill. So if we go to the next slide. All right, so Gary mentioned we have a training program guide. And while this does denote 2021, this is when we started putting all this material together. You will see it on the portal. It will be labeled the 2022, new for the 2022 season. All of the headers that are going down the right side of where the basketball picture is are pages from the training program. So it has been formulated to have a 12-week progressive practice plan. And we have addressed the novice, which could be for our individual skills. It can work for a lower level athlete on a 5-on-5 or a 3-on-3, very early stage of getting the skill foundation. The next piece there you'll see is a 12-week training program for intermediate and advanced. So geared more towards maybe a higher level 3-on-3 and or the 5v5 on the team competition, a lot of transition. Next piece in there is the fundamental station drills. So each of the categories, there's 9, is at least 1 page, and in some cases 2 pages. And it's very detailed on what that drill is and how you can perform that drill with your athletes. And then the final section is student of the game. So we're just trying to introduce concepts that aren't necessarily skill in nature, but they come up on the court because there's violations, there's fouls, and we want our athletes to understand what that was. Why did they lose possession of the ball? So all of that has been put together in this 46-page document. Some of you may have perused it yesterday from my teaser email or maybe this morning. So we do have a poll question that we're going to hit you with, which is what I had asked within the email. So on the training program guide, if anybody did look at it, what is the last section within that program training guide? We'll give you a moment to answer on there. People were peeking. I love it. Awesome. All right. So I don't know if we'll have more participation there, but that's great. So it is student of the game. Again, concepts for us to share with our athletes throughout the season, maybe reiterating them and help explain, give them examples, show it demonstrated on the court. I don't know if I can share these or someone else can. There you go. Okay. All right. So if we go to the next slide. All right, so I had mentioned that those pages that were to the right-hand side of the basketball picture were the front pages of each of these sections. If you look at this screen, on the left-hand side, you'll notice that it's the novice, and on the right-hand side, it's our intermediate and advanced. And again, if you're looking down through practice 1, where it starts, we're talking about having a team talk. And that's probably for your first practice, just to get everybody welcomed back and maybe have a little bit more discussion about how things are going to work. And this is the way the practices will run, etc. That may be something you want to carry forward in your additional practices. Maybe it's while they're warming up, but that's not something that's listed out on a consistent basis on a go forward. However, the warm-ups, the skill development, individual or team, from a fundamental standpoint, and then the cool down and a recap on the practice, and trying to reinforce maybe a theme, a consistent theme that came out of that particular practice. So both of these are built with those concepts in mind. Again, going back to that first page with the warm up, the skill development, individual team, and then as well. And you can see how it's laid out. So the pages that follow each of these sections are similar in that it details out and gives you options and time frames for how you can execute the different drills. So next slide, please, Cheryl. All right, so this was a supplemental document. This is also out on the portal. It may look familiar. We've introduced it previously. And this is the assessment form. Look, we have all been away from the program for basketball for a number of years. We're a little bit rusty. There's going to be team makeups that are different because of the participation levels with the different athletes. So your teams are probably going to change. You may be familiar with some of the athletes because they were in your gym, but you didn't coach them directly. And you may be reliant to get some input from some other coaches that are still there, which brings me to the next point. We've got new faces, which is awesome, but they don't have the familiarity perhaps with the athlete, and that can be really good because it can be a fresh set of eyes. So for these assessment documents, you know, it's a great tool for both the head and the assistant coaches. Go ahead and look at the athlete separately, compare your notes, and then figure out where the athlete best fits within the level of the overall group. You know, and maybe you're not going to a dose of reality, right? Maybe you're not going to sit there and fill out every form. You really should, even if it's just on a piece of note paper, writing down where you feel like these athletes fit from a, hey, that's the best shooter, that's the best passer, this person, so that you can construct the team makeup and that we have really good competition for the athletes and that they have a really great experience. Maybe they're not so proficient at one skill, but with another, and their teammate is the flip of that. And then they can grow together, and it's encouragement for them to try and keep up or to help demonstrate and teach. But we really do think that it would be valuable to take the time, especially since we've been away, different people now coming in the gym as far as athletes and coaches, and sharing what we do know about the athletes to make sure that we're combining athletes for the best teams possible. So next slide, please. Okie doke. So I mentioned on the fundamental station drills, and they're all kind of splayed out here on the left-hand side, the 9 different categories that we are offering within the training program that you can plug and play for how to build out your practice plan. On the right-hand side, it shows you an example of the dribbling page and how it goes into detail for each one of the drills. So it's pretty explicit. Some of it's self-explanatory. There's not a ton of detail necessary, but on others, and you will see, there are diagrams, pictures of the court, where the ball needs to go, placement of players or defenders. So if you have questions on that as you're going through it, obviously we're around. I'm around, happy to help and to share and to clarify. So next slide. So there's a lot of material, right? We've just talked through, we've got the practice plans themselves laid out. It's a progressive practice plan. It's built intentionally to add as you go through, but this comes back to the preparing. Look at your athletes. Maybe they're not progressing as fast as we've got it listed within the practice plans. Then run the second practice as the third practice, making sure that they're progressing forward, but don't overwhelm them. So for the key components of your practice plans, you're looking at this screen and it's, okay, which one of these tabs? Am I coaching individual skills? Am I coaching 3-on-3? Is my tab the 5v5 novice, or do I have the intermediate? Regardless of what tab I am, I have my core components in the middle. I've got my warm up and my stretching. I've got my fundamental station drills that I'm going to rely on. And then I've got a secondary set of fundamental station drills. And as I'm mentioning them, look, if you're an intermediate or advanced team, you may not be doing as much individual skill teaching. You may be doing more transition. That may be part of your scrimmage time. But the way that it's laid out, you'll be able to make those choices. And on the bottom sections of each of these tabs are what you would probably be focusing on if that is the team that you're coaching. So if you look at individual skills, it's the dribbling, it's passing, it's shooting, and it's noted there for recording results. And one of the things that's not on the slide, but it is a document that we've done before, for your individual athletes, we should be scoring them at every practice to get them in that mode and to have them in that routine of what it takes when they go to competition. But we'll make sure that that document's out on the portal. And if you slide all the way to the right, you're much more complex. You've got defensive sets, offensive sets. You know, it's your full transition, what you're working on, and you're probably doing a little bit more scrimmaging. Although I will say your practice should not be like more than, you know, 20–30%, depending. As you start getting closer to competition, yes, you probably have a little bit more transition and scrimmaging time, but prior to that, you should be really drilling on individual portions. Doesn't mean that you have to do all individual skills, but half-court sets, working through things, getting the repetitions. It's so important to have the repetitions. Okay, so we go to the next slide. So you have your tab, you know what team that you're working with, and then we get into, okay, well, why are we doing this? What's the deal with all this practice plans? Certainly warm up and stretching, injury prevention, gets them in the gym, gets them acclimated with their teammates, but primarily we want to make sure that they have a safe environment and they themselves are ready to go. From a fundamental skills, and you have the 2 sections there, it's your skill enhancements and is as much repetition as you can get, which comes back to utilizing your assistant coaches, right? Breaking out, getting them as many reps as they possibly can get while we're on the court. And then the last part is that team talk. So recapping, reinforcing whatever that theme may have been, or that became a prominent item that you kept reiterating throughout the practice. So that's kind of a template that you can use. And again, you don't have to use this per se. It may be, you may do it on your phone and text it to your assistant coaches. You may write it on a piece of paper and copy it and bring it in. But it's really important for everyone to have what the plan is before the players are coming in and you're starting to get ready to warm up. If we go to the next slide. So this is where, hypothetically, you're coaching a 5v5 and a novice. You're in your 3rd practice. So if you were to go into the training guide, you would say, okay, if I look up on the novice plan number 3, I'm going to see footwork. I'm going to see wall sits, defensive slides, and then I'm getting into my stretching. If you were to look up on your fundamental drills on your 1st section, I'm going to go to coach passing, right? Coach can be very accurate, can judge the speed, the strength of the pass. Then maybe you work into stationary passing, and that's listed there for, the drill number. And that's the athletes opposing each other on the lane, and they can work on their accuracy, their strength of the passing. And then you're working into the next set. And again, stationary dribbling, right? All in place, left hand, right hand. And then do we work through, dribbling on the move? Again, dominant hand, non-dominant hand. And this is a piece, again, if you're into the intermediate and advanced, this is probably your scrimmaging time. Not all of it, but you have a portion of your time dedicated to scrimmaging. And then the last piece here is a team talk. So reinforcing. So if you were working on dribbling, you're probably going to find yourself going, don't look at the floor, keep your eyes up. What do you see? Eyes up. And you can talk to them about that. Maybe even ask them, what does that mean? If we say an eyes up, what's that mean? So you're just trying to reinforce. Another piece for this too is, what will you do when you go home? Will you do other activities? Will you participate in, I know the office offered Zoom fitness classes. Do you pull up YouTube? Do you do a class on that? Our athletes have not been out on the court. The more that we can have them active while we're in the gym and while we're away from the gym is only going to benefit them when they ultimately go to competition. So for these, this document itself that we're walking through tonight will be put up on the portal. You'll be able to look through those things. You have the guide that's out there, the training program guide that's out there to be able to put these pieces together. But this is just more or less a visual as to how those pieces came together and how you would put together your plan. So if we go to the next slide. We are back to, these are the components, right? We're stressing, warming up. And I will say, warming up means you walk in the gym and if practice starts at 1, you're out on the court warming up at 1. This isn't, oh, well, we're going to walk around, we're going to hang out, we're going to chit chat, whatever, because our time in our facilities is really precious. And this is where it helps when the assistant coaches are involved, because if the head coach is standing there having a conversation with the parent or needs to go outside and talk to somebody, then you have other individuals that know what the plan is and they're getting the team going. The skill development, the group activity, team development, and our cool down. And again, I'm coming back to the focus on the fitness and the health overall, keeping them moving. So all in all, these all tie in, right? The core values that Gary walked through really do tie in with what we're trying to do from a practical standpoint on the construction of a practice plan and how we execute that and how it provides our athletes a really great experience and yourselves as well, to see them grow and do well in their competition. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on the program deck. I think everything that we walked through did kind of tie in. Hopefully it gave you a sense of how you can utilize the tool. For folks that did go in and look at the document, hopefully you found it helpful just in perusing it. And then ultimately when you start to put the pieces together, again, if you have questions, feel free to email, definitely can help you put that together. In our prior clinic, there were questions on individual skills because sometimes we don't go into a lot of that, and how to utilize the practice time and how do you work with individual skills athletes, maybe with the team in some portion of the practice, and then break out and do your part with just the individual skills. Again, if you're looking for guidance on how to utilize your court space and your court time, I'm happy to try and help walk through the best way to utilize your time. So with that, I think we may have another poll question. Kylie, let me know. I don't know if we had, I know I need to do the final one, but was there any others that we had in there that we didn't do?
There is. So I'm going to throw up, I know we talked, or Fee spoke to it, but just going to throw it up there and get your honest feedback for prior seasons on your scrimmage time. So how frequently did you previously scrimmage at practice? A few more seconds.
It's funny to watch the lines kind of shimmy back and forth.
All right, so Fee, hopefully you guys can see the results.
Yes, yes. So I think in general, obviously the less than 25% is great. And I know that there's going to be a variation in here with the type of athletes that you're working with, right? If you're doing individual skills, you may not be qualifying that as scrimmaging. The 50 to 75% or the more than 75%, I would say, I would look at your time spent on court and see where you might be able to insert more half court sets and to work on development there so that it would come together in a greater transition time for actual end-to-end, court scrimmaging. And then the last question, the poll that we have is, as Cheryl mentioned, we have 2 more of these scheduled. We certainly have topics that we would like to be able to share, but we also would like to hear from you as to what would be a topic of most interest. So would that be, and I'll say, put it in the chat. Is that, I'll give some suggestions. Is that, how do you execute a higher level drill? What are other resources that we can use to determine other, skills drills to do? Is it a coach Q&A? Do you want to spend time just, we be quiet and you all talk amongst yourselves on different things that you're seeing on the court or how you may be able to help each other? So I would say take a moment, and if you can go into the chat and then just type in what you would prefer to see or hear as a topic. Anyone? Euler? I don't know if I'm not seeing it because I had another chat up there, but
Nothing's come in yet. Whenever anyone wants to type anything in.
Don't be shy.
So please continue to type into the chat. Real quickly, I know that we've gone a little bit over what we had promised, but it's all great stuff. And just want to thank both Afif and Gary for joining us tonight and just helping us launch our basketball season. Again, I'm going to put the slide deck and the recording up on the portal for those of you that want to review it again. Please put on your calendar to join us next Tuesday for round 2. If there are people that are not on that you think would really, that are on your team, please encourage them to get on the portal and view the slide deck and the information that was shared for tonight. If you have any questions, you think of it later, you think, oh my goodness, I should have typed that question in, please make sure that you email Afif. You can email Kylie, myself, we'll make sure that Afif gets it. I promise I won't try to answer the questions.